All right. So the final podcast of the season, one of the most exciting podcast with David Bronner, CEO, which means Cosmic Engagement Officer of Dr. Bronner's. In the meantime, I think everybody this year has heard of you in terms of your supporting system, you could say, for the psychedelic movement. I'm super happy that you're back on the show. And it's almost like a year ago that we met in Nuremberg, of all places, and had the first podcast. So I'm happy that we can film this today. And I mean, a lot has happened this year, right? You must feel like you have been in a kind of a psychedelic accelerator this year with all the amazing, institutions, you could say, or like initiatives you supported. So how do you feel right now, like at the end of the year? You must feel like it's like you achieved like so many things in 1 year.
Yeah, it's been, just an incredible election cycle for psychedelic medicine and therapy. We ran the tables on all the campaigns we were involved in. So that was the Oregon psilocybin therapy measure. And alongside that was the treatment, not jail, transitioning the drug war generally from a criminalization of addiction to a treatment approach. When someone's struggling with alcohol, when you have a friend or family struggling with alcohol, we don't call the police and lock them up. We get them into treatment, and we should be doing that for all drug and substance use disorders. And so in Oregon, we had that perfect pairing of a shift from a criminalization approach to a treatment approach, and then bringing in psilocybin treatment, which shows such promise for substance use disorders, alcoholism, smoking cessation, and as well as treatment-resistant depression and healing trauma and mental health generally. And then in DC, we had the Decriminalize Nature campaign. So decriminalizing all plant medicines used in ceremony for healing and spiritual growth. Here, puppy, get out of here. Okay. Yeah, and then on the cannabis front, we had 3 red states, so Montana, South Dakota, and Mississippi, showing that ending cannabis prohibition is a bipartisan issue, which is crucial right now in the U.S. context. It's obviously very divided. So we have hope now that we can actually end cannabis prohibition at a federal level. Totally, how do you say, unexpectedly, the U.S. voted to deschedule cannabis in the UN. I don't know if you heard about this, but the UN descheduled cannabis.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Wow. And and America voted for it, which is the Trump administration. So that's pretty amazing in the context of everything going on right now. So while a lot of things in the U.S. are not awesome, drug policy reform and psychedelic renaissance is really proceeding, even in the current climate. So we feel like what we did in Oregon really sets the model and precedent for the rest of the country. And actually, I'll share, while I was late coming here, California has a Senate champion. Our California State Senator Scott Wiener wants to introduce a legislation to decriminalize medicines, and I was fielding some very concerned people on the peyote front, and that's a real issue here in the U.S. That as decriminalization and as the psychedelic renaissance unfolds, that we need to be really careful about the demand pressure on these medicines, and especially in the case of peyote, the wild gardens are in a state of collapse. And so if we're not really careful about how this unfolds, then we're going to just basically eradicate the medicine that the native tribes here have been relying on for millennia. And obviously that would be terrible. So we just need to make sure that we're being very conscious and careful as the psychedelic renaissance unfolds, that we're also engaged on biocultural preservation projects and helping indigenous leaders and wisdom keepers preserve their traditions and medicines and benefit from the psychedelic renaissance and aren't disrupted or even destroyed by it. But yeah, these are all good problems, I think.
Sure.
It's yeah. So, and then in Germany, thank you so much. I mean, for helping lead the charge there in Germany, and it's just incredible to see it starting to happen around the world. Yeah.
Yeah, it's starting to gain traction, I think. But I mean, in so many media outlets in America, the headline was after the election, the big winner or the winner of this election are drugs.
Yeah.
And like from very conservative outlets to, let's say, Vice or all these things, everybody was pretty much agreeing on this. So you said earlier that like everybody had amazing results in all the places, Oregon, Washington. So, and why do you think that is that people, obviously very normal people, not like, let's say, futuristic Silicon Valley CEOs, like really normal people seem to agree that there is obviously a big need having other therapies accessible? Why do you think that has been so strong? Because it's incredible numbers that you guys reached.
Yeah, no, right. I mean, 76% in DC, and that's great. And when we win in DC a campaign where, when we're talking to the local media, we're also talking to the national leadership. So it's, it's a crucial place to win, and no one's ever won with 76%. It's kind of unheard of. Mm-hmm. And in Oregon, pretty impressive victories as well. Yeah, I mean, what I think is that it's a combination of just the incredible results that have come out of all the clinical trials at Johns Hopkins and NYU and UCLA, and just, leading to FDA breakthrough designation for psilocybin therapy and MDMA-assisted therapy, respectively, for psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression and MDMA therapy for PTSD. And I think the huge amount of mobilization of different advocacy groups, especially the veterans, the groups focused on healing the trauma of veterans. It's just kind of a perfect storm of just really good results, getting published from MAPS and from our MAP studies for MDMA. Michael Pollan, of course. I mean, just a lot of cultural factors at Johns Hopkins. And I mean, I think the veteran groups that have really, so it's Heroic Hearts Project, Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. Heroic Hearts Project is working with Ayahuasca. They send veterans carrying out a lot of trauma and emotional pain and scars down to Peru to drink ayahuasca together and heal up together. And Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, VETS, is working with ibogaine and 5-MeO-DMT. And there's thinking that the ibogaine actually really helps not just with healing the trauma, but also the actual brain damage from repeated concussive, I forget what they call it, traumatic brain injury, TBI, from the repeated blast concussions. And the same with pro athletes. There was just a really good episode on Brian Kimball's Real Sports with Brian Kimball, with like hockey players and MMA, mixed martial arts fighters and all these kind of, just high level athletes who are suffering a lot. It's kind of similar to veterans transitioning out of professional sports and carrying a lot of trauma and head injury, getting incredible healing and just feeling comfortable to share their stories in the media. And then coupled with that, I think we're really kind of maybe getting past this cultural split of the 60s. In some ways, obviously we're not, but in terms of the drug war and drug policy and psychedelics and cannabis as a proxy to go after the counterculture and all that, I think maybe we're kind of moving out of that, as well as just maybe a general recognition that arresting people, well, just drug policy generally is shifting. And I think maybe even criminal justice policy, that obviously there's so much deep reform that needs to happen here in the US. But I think there's, how do you say it? It's definitely bipartisan to an extent. I mean, the degree of reform is obviously a big debate right now in the country, but I think everybody agrees that we do need to reform our police and criminal justice. And there's a lot of stuff that we're doing right now that shouldn't be criminalized and doesn't need to involve the police. Obviously the drug war. I mean, the US has almost 25% of the world's prison population with less than 5% of the actual population. Like,
Wow.
it's ridiculous. And I think there's a growing recognition on all sides that that's not right, and is really harming a lot of communities, especially people of color, Black and brown people.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, so I think just a lot of factors are coming together right now. And COVID really highlighting the deep mental health crisis we're in and how inadequate our current pharma and therapy approaches are to a lot of mental health and the struggles we're in. And the medicines have, they come from these indigenous ways of being and knowing and healing and relating, and have an answer, I think, for a lot of people to really do some deep work and heal up trauma on a deep level, and reconnect with themselves in a more authentic way, and reconnect with the natural world. So yeah.
But I mean, when you say it's more like a bipartisanal thing to look at, and that more veterans would be rather on the conservative side. But at the same time, it seems it's really good if so-called conservative people are very convinced by these therapies, right? I mean, it feels that the more conservative people are convinced, the better, it seems like.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. I mean, obviously we also want to be healing up all the marginalized and traumatized communities in the inner cities, and a lot of, just the systemic racism and all the trauma that associates with that. But politically speaking, the veteran community and having the conservative side of the political spectrum really, understand the healing power of these medicines in kind of terms that they understand is really crucial to making the progress we've made. And Rick Doblin's, been really smart. I mean, he really, picked, there's a lot of medicines out there and a lot of conditions that we can help. And he picked MDMA for PTSD, and in part because he knew that would engage the veteran community and really, have crucial allies in this project to integrate these medicines and therapies.
But so were there moments in this year when you were like, I mean, you fought, I mean, even before the whole year started, and kind of the organizations were starting to work, and the Measure 81, Oregon Measure 110. So were there moments when you were really a little bit, not going to say frustrated, but exhausted, if this would ever go forward, and what would happen?
Well, COVID was nuts. I mean, like that, because, to get ballot measures qualified, you got to gather like a ton of signatures. Citizens in general, like 5% of the voting population. And with COVID and lockdowns, and like we couldn't go gather signatures. So it became really difficult to do this by alternative means. We had to mail people signature forms, and just kind of navigate like a very difficult environment, and it cost a lot more. But fortunately, Dr. Bronner's, we were in the unique position of selling soap and sanitizer, and our profits like went through the roof. So we were able to cover like the shortfall or the additional cost all these campaigns were facing. And it was just it was funny. I mean, wow. I mean, obviously it's a horrible situation, but our costs went down because none of us can go anywhere, and our revenues went way up. So that translates in our business model. Our executive compensation is capped at 5 times our lowest paid position. So all profits we don't need for the business, which, to grow the business like we have, it takes a lot of financial resources, but everything we don't need, we give to the causes and charities we believe in. And so this year, a $3 million budget turned into a $6 million budget to help these campaigns.
Wow.
And we were able to just really fill in, and other donors and philanthropists were not necessarily in the kind of position we were. So it was our responsibility, given that we were benefiting from the situation, to fill it in. So so I would say that initially with COVID, it was really tough, especially in DC. But we were able to pull it out and qualify the measure. And then once they were qualified, I guess there was some concern in Oregon about whether or not we'd raise enough money to communicate. Because all our polling has showed is so long as we could effectively communicate with voters about what psilocybin therapy is, that we would get a support. But that the base where we were starting from was like low 40s, like 42%. Like there wasn't a ton of awareness what we were talking about, and people are like, you know what? And so we absolutely had to be able to communicate, and have end of life, hospice providers and caregivers and various mental health professionals and veterans who've gotten their lives back, family members who've witnessed the power of a loved one who's dying, who's facing debilitating anxiety in that process, get their life back from this therapy. And those testimonials are so persuasive and powerful, but you have to be able to, buy the airtime to be able, so those stories can be heard, told and heard.
Right.
And so there was a question of, okay, are we going to hit our fundraise target? I mean, obviously it was helpful that we were able to come in big, but it wasn't going to be even as big as we came in. We still needed at least double for each campaign. I mean, these are, $5-6 million campaigns, each of them. So, I mean, our 6 it's key, but it's only like a third of the picture. So, so we needed to have other donors really come in, and that was, I wasn't ever that worried, but it was some points I was like, okay, come on, everybody.
Yeah. Well, you need to keep it together and coordinate between the leaders of the campaigns, I guess, right? I mean, I think that's also something that you have to do, that they kind of exchanged their knowledge or their strategies maybe at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. The coalition dynamics and drama. Yeah. There's definitely always movement. How do you say personalities and stuff happens. And, that's never super fun, but it's part of it.
And so when did you create actually the Heal Soul series? What was this? Was this actually designed to support also especially the initiatives?
Yeah, and I'm realizing that there's some background noise, so I might move actually to another spot.
Okay.
Hopefully it's gonna move. But here. Okay, now you just have the sound of my puppy drinking water.
Yeah. We will include the puppy in the whole thing, I guess. You have to show him later, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, here he is. He's like.
Okay. Is it a puppy? It's really big.
Yeah, he's a blue healer. This is Opera.
Okay.
And, it's a blue healer, and he's got a little black lab in him.
Okay. All right. So now he's in the picture too. So we will have him on the show too. Okay. Let's quickly come back to the Heal Soul series. Like, how did you think of creating it, or was it designed to support the psychedelic engagement? Because on the bottle you can read the whole explanation about psychedelic therapy.
Yeah, so Heal Soul, it was a beautiful campaign idea. We've been running what we call Heal Earth, is a campaign that's all about regenerative organic agriculture, and it's promise that if adopted globally and the 1/3 of the Earth's surface that's right now under generally industrial agricultural mismanagement that's destroying ecosystems and just blasting so much synthetic fertilizer and pesticides and herbicides and just that are totally disrupting natural ecosystem function and doing so much harm, that if we can shift our agriculture globally to regenerative organic management, whereas basically you farm in nature's image. If you look at a forest, a wild ecosystem, it's totally self-regenerating. You don't need to put a whole bunch of synthetic chemicals into it. And interestingly, Michael Pollan, who's a big champion of psychedelics, it's his other passion is regenerative organic agriculture and responsible dietary choice. He wrote a book called Omnivore's Dilemma.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So Heal Earth, and it's funny, we have the same kind of twin passions. We're very passionate about regenerating agriculture and making sure we can farm for, 1,000 generations. Like right now, we're just ripping the soil, the fertility out of the soil. We're ripping the earth apart. It's a disaster. And there's a lot of industries that are responsible for the problem. But agriculture is a massive, massive problem. Anyway, so we already had this Heal Earth campaign that we've been doing, and we transform our label, which our label is generally my granddad, Dr. Bronner, it's all about his vision of peace on earth and the one true religion of love at the heart of all faith traditions. And when they're not making idols out of their beliefs and demonizing each other, they're all pointing at that transcendent mystery and love at the heart of reality, and that we need to realize our unity across religious and ethnic divides. And that's my granddad's message generally, but we'll change that label once in a while for a particular cause. So we've been doing the Heal Earth, and we did that earlier this year. And then the latter half of this year, so basically starting in September, we introduced the Heal Soul label. And the Heal Soul label is all about psychedelic assisted therapy and the promise that these medicines have to heal us up, heal the epidemics of depression and anxiety and addiction that are, ravaging the U.S. and much of the world. And the promise that these medicines have, and really breaking it down in a really clear way. Our goal, my brother likes to say, our goal was to communicate in a way that my mom's church group could receive. So, to not, to really just keep it in a very tight therapeutic frame. And we sell into Walmart and Target and Walgreens and like pretty, mainstream channels, as well as natural food stores. And, and it was a calculated risk. And I thought for sure we were going to have to like pull it out of some of our retailers, that there was going to be some controversy, but we literally had not one retailer complain at all about it. In fact, Walgreens, which has got like 10,000 stores here in the US, we gave them a Heal Earth, like they wanted to do an advertisement in their store, kind of in-store thing. And we gave them the Heal Earth picture, and they're like, no, we want Heal Soul. And I was like, and it just showed the acceptance that, like just the moment we're in, that's just another, sign of the acceptance that we could do something that I thought would be totally controversial. And it was not at all. It was like literally, we did not have one bad comment about the label. And it went out, billions of bottles, into, tens of thousands of stores.
So we need to have it in Europe too, I think. Very soon.
I agree. It's kind of this thing where, and I've told my brother and our partners, it's like, what we just showed here is that it's not controversial, but we didn't do this 4 years ago, and we didn't do it 2 years ago. We kind of waited for the right moment. So, we need to kind of be in a dialogue with our partners. Like, is Germany ready? It might be another 2 year, it might be like 2022. We do that, we got to make sure that we're not, because for sure, if we did this 4 years ago here, it would have been, it wouldn't have even been funny, it would
get a lot of troubleshooting, I guess.
Right? Yeah.
But with that kind of, let's say, data, you could almost say, on hand. So how do you think the next step in the Dr. Bronner's engagement will look like? Now you have, increasing states who will actually open up to cannabis, but also really allowing or working on allowing psychedelic therapy. So how do you think the engagement in the next years will look like? Besides just, of course, like giving money to organizations, but also like a strategy that you can think of.
Yeah. First and foremost, I think the therapeutic model that we introduced into Oregon, that we want to see that be adopted. We feel like that's the most crucial model to integrate into the culture. We totally believe in decriminalizing the medicines and having people be able to use medicines at home or out in the forest, or however they think is awesome. But if we really want to optimize the therapeutic potential and healing of these medicines, that therapeutic container really is important. First of all, in that it really controls a set and setting, and there's a lot of intention and a lot of like therapeutic process. You do a lot of therapeutic work beforehand. You go in with a lot of intention into the medicine. It's relatively high dose. So it's important to really control that environment and make a safe container for people to have that experience, and then to do the integration work after. And, you know, that's where you really optimize the power, the healing power of these medicines. And then it's also really important for the more naive citizenry, more how do you say, people who don't really know psychedelic medicine. It's not something they're comfortable with or know anything about. That having that kind of safe, well-structured therapeutic model is like, that's how people will access these medicines. They're not going to go to an ayahuasca ceremony or, you know, or, hey mom, you know, mushrooms are decriminalized. Here you go. You know, it's not going to work.
In your mom's church.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think that's the first of all, but we also do want to see broad-based decriminalization and you know, just, we do think ceremony is really important. That's a very, you know, there's a lot of deep healing that people can access. So really want to make sure that medicines are decriminalized and religious use and ceremonial use proceeds. So that's the other huge, how do you say, strategic front. And then broad-based treatment, not jail, to just shift, even with hard drugs of abuse, that we shouldn't be throwing people in jail. We should be treating them. And then the different, I guess, strategy or political strategies would be legislatively is now, it's now looks more possible to win through a legislative process, which is generally more difficult than a ballot measure. Ballot measure, you can write what you want, you take it to the people, they vote on it, you get exactly what you wanted. But it costs a lot of money. But a legislative process generally doesn't cost so much money, but it's a lot more difficult. But we think now that we've won with the ballot measures, that legislative process is more possible. So now we're seeing legislation in California being introduced. I guess New Jersey just decriminalized mushrooms. It is, you know, kind of out of nowhere, which was awesome. And there's a lot of other states. So legislatively, and then ballot measure wise, Colorado for sure in 22. Washington State's also up. Maybe, I mean, California will probably wait, because especially when we're talking about the broad-based treatment, not jail, those campaigns, it's probably going to be 2024 realistically for that to happen. And then federally, you know, just keep lobbying at the federal level. You know, we got a Biden administration. It's not, you know, he's not the super best on drug policy, but his son struggled with addiction, and he hopefully evolved a little bit in his understanding of what is and isn't helpful for someone struggling with addiction. And, you know, just throwing them in jail is obviously not helping anybody. So yeah, and then MAPS, we're continuing MAPS work. MAPS, so in addition to moving MDMA through FDA approval, they have something called the Zendo Project. And Zendo is, historically, it's been about creating safe spaces at transformational festivals like Burning Man and Boom Festival, where people are taking psychedelics in often pretty uncontrolled environments and can have all of a sudden a very difficult experience, or you know, just have like really intense stuff coming up for them, and being able to kind of go to a safe space that's like chill and soothing, and have trained sitters there that can kind of like help calm you down and provide a space, basically a therapeutic space for you to kind of have a journey and an experience that is can resolve in a really good way. Is really important. And so, but Zendo is now being reimagined, that, okay, now as the whole world is like turning on and we're decriminalizing these medicines, like we need a lot, there's a huge education gap. There's a lot of people who really don't know what they're doing. And so one, we need to educate people about setting and intention and integration, but also working with universities. So Zendo has a vision of like basically having Zendo in every single US university.
Interesting. Okay.
So that, you know, if you're having a difficult experience, there's a place to go. So that's another big project. obviously actually moving MDMA through approval process. That's going to be a huge milestone. And then how do we scale that? I mean, there's a big problem of training enough therapists. There's a bottleneck of, there's like a patient population of something like 8 million in the US that suffer from PTSD. And there's not that many therapists yet, so there's like, how do we scale the therapists that can deliver this therapy without compromising quality and efficacy? So that's a big issue.
Yeah. Everywhere. Yeah. So just quickly to get this right. So the Oregon model means also that somebody could say, I feel depressed, I'm suffering from depression. I could go and see a psychedelic therapist, like the very short version. And he or she could make that decision without having to try SSRIs before.
Yeah.
One could just say, I want to do this right away, right?
Exactly. So the beauty of the Oregon model is it's, so Tom and Sri Eckert are a husband and wife therapist team. And they work with, in particular, work with domestic violence, both victims and perpetrators, and they understand the power of psilocybin therapy in that context, but also really understand it as just incredibly helpful for everybody, and that we're all struggling with the dilemmas of life, and we're all on the spectrum of everything, and we should not be limiting access to psilocybin therapy to people who have a narrow qualifying diagnosis of treatment-resistant depression. And that's what's going to happen with the FDA medical pharma model. We're going to have that in Europe, and that's great, and it's generating amazing clinical results. But it's not going to provide access to everybody who can benefit. So the Oregon model is basically taking it kind of out of the medical pharma frame and putting it into a therapeutic frame, like in the way you would access therapy generally, or acupuncture, or chiropractor or something. You don't need to have like a diagnosis of anything in particular. It's just so long as you're not contraindicated with schizophrenia or some other indication that would make it a bad idea, and you can safely access the therapy, then you can do so. So the Oregon model is basically opening it up to everybody, but still maintaining that therapeutic container, and making it, how do you say, replicating what the Johns Hopkins trials are doing. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that should happen in Europe too, hopefully. But so as we know, you come from your ancestors come from Heilbronn.
Yeah.
Is it your grandfather or your grandfather, right?
So my grandfather, Dr. Bronner, was born in Heilbronn. Yeah. His grandfather was in Laupheim and actually started manufacture of soap in 1858. But the family must have been in Heilbronn before that, because our name was Heilbronner. And then I guess we went to Laupheim, and then we went back to Heilbronn.
So, we talked about this already in our first podcast, that when you just visited the place for the first time and also saw the Holocaust story of your family the first time, like with these cobblestones, like the stepping stones around with saying Bronners. So, I'm just bringing this up because we had already, which was really amazing, Rachel Yehuda on the podcast.
Yes.
Talking about the epigenetic trauma and the kind of the new ways of looking into, the Holocaust past or the Nazi past, as wherever you want to look at it, from what angle. So, and I know that you have plans to do certain things like in Germany or Europe. So is this something that you think about, how to work around this topic in Germany or in Europe? Since you come from, let's say, with that history, you come from a similar history, like a lot of people who had to leave Germany, or some people couldn't leave it anymore because they were killed in the camps. So is this something that kind of, since you saw this, which is now almost like a year ago, is it something that kept, let's say, kind of working in you as a topic, and you kept thinking about it? Or, of course you did, but I mean, did it lead to any new insights or new projects maybe?
Yeah, well, I think on our last podcast I shared, just my experience of, just really, feeling my granddad and great aunts and just playing in the streets. And, we were very integrated, bourgeois Jewish family, so making family, and mostly non-Jewish friends, we're Germans first. And, and just like realizing the enormity of the tragedy of just, having the whole world turn on you and the culture that you love just turn on you and really feeling that, but then going around the corner and seeing that park and, feeling drawn to it. And like, what's that park? And it was like, oh, it's a cemetery. And it was a German cemetery, not a Jewish cemetery. And I was feeling this like just incredible feeling of like deep solidarity and salute between the German and the Jewish dead, just saluting each other and like just like in common, I don't know, fate. And that like in realizing that most of these Germans, were not Nazis, they were kids. And like the whole generational slaughter that went down in World War II and World War I, and, just like this conflagration on all sides, and this whole generation just slaughtered and sacrificed, and that just feeling this karmic life flow with all this complexity and trauma, coming through, and each generation suffering it and being caught in it, and then delivering, moving it forward and passing the torch to the next generation. And then, here we are. And then back in Burning Man, just had a big experience on LSD on a certain night, because some of our Jewish guests in our camp, because we have a big foam shower. My dad developed firefighting foam and for structure and forest fires, and then a version for Hollywood that we blast on trees to make it look like it snowed. Okay. And it's super fun to like have a big foam party. We just blast foam, and it's a kind of huge party at Burning Man. You come in and it's not on the dance floor itself. You actually kind of get in a shower. It's like a big foam shower, and 50 people get blasted with foam at a time, and it's very ecstatic and amazing. But for some of our Jewish guests, it's been triggering, or I guess the association is made always by pretty much all European and Jewish guests that like, whoa, that's kind of like how the Nazis like, gave the shower, towel and bath, to the Jews. And then, so, and most people move through it. They're like, wow, well, this is love's answer to all that. Well, amazing. But some people get really triggered, like generational trauma triggered, and like they hear like the screaming, yelling, and joy, like they hear it like the nightmare. Wow. And so it's pretty, and I had a lady reach out to me with her experience on it like that. And what we did is we actually took a picture for this next year. Reformation was 2016, and we had recreated in some ways unconsciously the Temple of Eleusis, like or somewhat consciously. We had the Demeter, and Persephone, right. And we were celebrating Albert Hoffman and LSD, but she came by as this LSD I'd taken was coming on, and it was like the sun was setting, and and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, Ali, let me show you what we did. And we took in a picture of the stumble stones in front of my grandparents, my grandparent, Dr. Bronner's childhood home. So it was, Dr. Bronner and his parents. So my great grandparents, Bertolt and Francisca, they're stumble stones, and it's like their date of birth, their date of deportation, and date of murder. Just in we had a sign that said, for any of our guests who are experiencing generational trauma, we hold you in our hearts until you pass through to the, present moment of celebration, L'chaim. And, just trying to like honor it, but not trigger it, I'm just and as I was walking up with her, I was like coming in, and it was like, it was after, the sun was setting, it was a party, it was, it was just kind of empty. And I was kind of nervous. I'm like, oh shit, I'm coming up, LSD's coming up. I'm going to hit the ancestral plane. And I'm like, dude, is this cool? Are we doing a cool shit thing here? Or is it not, And
Sorry,
like,
this is funny.
you know, and I come up and I'm feeling my friends up on the, spinning tunes, and I'm coming up on our big shower trailers, and I feel the same presence I felt in the graveyard at Heilbronn, and I felt the ancestors, and they were just dancing with me. They're just like, calm joy radiating, and just like, you go, son. Like, yeah, they're just like, it's like, we're with you. Like, you just keep going. It's like we're the phoenix. Like, it was just like a very calm, radiant joy, just like in just dancing with them, and it was this mega experience. And yeah, so I definitely have experienced in my own kind of way the healing and processing, and I think that the trauma we carry, all of us carry some degree of trauma, and from multiple sources, and some more immediate, some more generational, and that's ricocheting down the generations, and structural. In the U.S., obviously, we have the legacy of slavery and racism and the genocide of the Indians, and these are things that we haven't collectively really grappled with adequately yet. So I think these medicines really can help a lot of us maybe get in touch with that. Certainly the victims and their lineages first and foremost, but also the perpetrators, all of us, like on all sides of the equation. And I'm on all sides. I'm a quarter Jewish. I've got German and Scandinavian blood. I'm just totally on all sides of
Did you do the test, the Me23?
Yeah, I was exactly 25% Ashkenazi and 75%.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
25. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
No, but I think this whole topic, which we addressed this year with Rachel Yehuda or Monica Williams, which was really fascinating.
Yes.
And I think this is something, besides the whole depression and mental health question, this is something that is so just in the beginning of, but you already feel what kind of topic that is for every nation. Once these kind of specific, let's say, national traumas would be addressed by that or by psychedelics or by a psychedelic journey. And I think I talked about this in a couple of podcasts that I had that experience in Synthesis, but also other Germans who went to Synthesis, they were either in Second World War, like in the battlefield because their ancestors were there, or they were actually in a concentration camp walking around. So, and they were never really engaged before in these topics. So, but it's like, it took like 5 minutes, and so it comes on as a topic. Yeah. So, and this is so interesting how this is underlying like all the time in every decision people are making, in every, I don't know, like every daily life situation, this topic is still so there and here in Germany, people are always like, well, this is like really long time ago now, this Nazi thing. And I think we just should not talk about it anymore. It's like, okay, it takes like 2 minutes or 5 minutes in a trip. And then this is the topic you will have for hours and days and whatnot. So this is so interesting how this will change also, I think, like a national, kind of discourse or like the relation you would have to the place where you come from.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like definitely a key dimension of the medicines is they're integrators. Like everything that you're like you're being in your shadow, you don't want to think about, you just kind of arrange your life to not deal with, like all that stuff is going to got kind of stirred up, and you're going to be kind of confronted with it and integrated. It's basically, these are integrator, they're about like integrating all your kind of disparate dimensions of self and experience. And then I realized I should share like my first ayahuasca experience was a nightmare. It was like a freight train of just like the blood. The ayahuasca was singing his songs, and it was just like the slaughter of the Indians, and the blood running and then the rainforest burning. That like like the rainforest burning. Change the channel. That's bad.
Yeah.
What's for dinner? But not really dealing with the enormity of like what the fuck we're doing. And, the meditation just threw me into like just the fucking inferno of what we were doing to nature. And like, and, it was just like one of the most difficult experiences I've ever been through. I mean, it was just like, oh my God. But then also hearing the Ayahuasca songs and like and just, wow, the healing power of this medicine coming from a tradition that we almost eradicated to heal all of us. And it was such a beautiful, experience too. I mean, it was like one of the most like horrible, but also really beautiful. And so, yeah, I mean, and when you're dealing with that stuff, I mean, it's not easy at all, but you need to, that's how we kind of deal with it and process it and metabolize it, I think, as a culture and as a people, and so that we can move forward and, be more understanding and cool in our collective choices and policy choices. And, we do need to right historical wrongs, and there's ways we can do that, and instead of perpetuating it, which in the U.S. unfortunately kind of still are, in terms of the legacy of systemic racism and slavery. And so, yeah, there's still a big grappling we need to do here that hopefully these medicines can help with.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, now you have you're very engaged in the psychedelic, let's say, activism for a while, but this year was specifically like insightful. And I mean, what would you say is still, or is now maybe the most important or the best working tool if it comes to destigmatization? Because like, if I look at all these podcasts this year, one thing, of course, is that we have science on hand that shows this is working, this is not working, or this is kind of helping to treat depression. But it seems that one of the also similar important things is to destigmatize psychedelics, because, as you say, most people would still say like, oh God, I'm not going to go to jail, I'm not going to go crazy, I'm not going to, and so on. Like all these kind of, let's say, cultural references we still have. So what do you think has been this year for you or for Dr. Bronner the best, most effective tool to destigmatize the topic?
Yeah, well, I think it's the clinical trials. I mean, it's the results coming out on depression and PTSD, and the fact that FDA has granted breakthrough status. And I would say the veteran community are probably the huge destigmatizing forces, I would say. In DC, actually, the lady there that ran, who's our leader, Melissa Lavasani, like her sharing her story honestly about treating her postpartum depression. I think that's a whole other community of basically mothers, and I think that's going to be very crucial but I think everybody, as more and more people feel comfortable sharing their stories of healing and transformation just with friends and family, like that's, it's kind of like the gay LGBTQ trajectory, like coming out and come out wherever you are, as you come out to friends and family, it just starts to transform the political landscape, as people realize like all these prejudices and ideas are like, no, it's actually my friend. He's rad. So, so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Melissa and I, we also, of course, had her on a podcast, and we always made fun of these articles saying like how she's the normal mom.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I don't even know what that means, the normal mom. So,
totally.
But I mean, it's interesting.
Play that hat. We'll look normal for a second. But
yeah. And also, of course, I mean, like you mentioned the HBO thing, like that. Well, Daniel Castillo was also in the show.
Yeah.
But also Mike Tyson was in the news, like in the last couple of weeks, talking about his DMT experience that made him getting back into the ring and just coming back. And I mean, it's really weird because I interviewed him 7 years ago for GQ, and he was totally on SSRIs, I think, pretty sure, because he kind of mentioned something. And he was like a different person. he was like, he came across like 10 years older than he comes across now. So, and it's like two different lives, basically. So,
right on. You know, I haven't been following his story. I kind of heard a little mention about him being back in the ring. But I mean, I know I'd heard he'd been cool with tried DMT, but that's rad.
Yeah.
So as we see these public figures, like obviously doing better, that's obviously helpful.
It is, right?
Yeah.
It's still kind of, I mean, the moment somebody's, I mean, you're not going to say celebrity, but so if people like that speak out and say like, I mean, other than that, without psilocybin, I would be dead. So people really start to listen, I guess, right?
Yeah. No, that's 100%. Like that's some of the most powerful testimony possible. I was just thinking about like Mike Tyson saying DMT told him to get back in the ring. I'm like, I guess so. But anyways,
well, but it's really on Fox News. That's even better. It's like he's talking to a guy at Fox about, I did DMT. It's like just a couple of years ago, this would be like probably like a on Saturday Night Live or something.
Yeah.
Now it's reality. So
I know. And like, and that's just the thing, is to make sure that psychedelics doesn't go the way of cannabis, and that we really keep it in this kind of healing, wellness, transformational frame, and not just becomes another like commoditized thing like cannabis has. It's like really lost its positioning as a medical healing tool.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing you're bringing up as a question, as a last question maybe, because like you had this engagement in cannabis like years ago with insane investors jumping on it all over the place. And then of course there was the legalization in California, and you had Mad Men and all these companies like the Apple, like looked like an Apple store. But suddenly this also disappeared very quickly, like almost like it was what would be like a chocolate or like a beer that suddenly disappeared because it wasn't cool anymore or anything. So, and then the next thing was like so many cannabis investors said, well, now we're now investing in psychedelics. So, and it's kind of weird how this suddenly becomes also like an extremely like lifestyle product that is after a couple of years people will go like, now we kind of fed up with this, we need another substance or something. So but how do we prevent this, that psychedelics doesn't have the same or won't have the same trajectory? What do you think?
Well, we're definitely engaged with allies on exactly that. There's a group called North Star that's trying to organize like venture capital in a more ethical way, like deploying capital in a way that's more conscious in the space and patient, and funding the right kind of clinics and companies. I mean, we're already seeing a spectrum of, let's say, a spectrum of less and better psychedelic pharma companies in the space. So I think it's just about, like the same philanthropists right now that are driving the policy. Like also, I think in cannabis, part of it was the philanthropists that drove the end of prohibition were not engaged on profiting over the business side. Like it wasn't, no one wasn't paying attention to that. We were just like, we need to, if I can end prohibition, that's where a lot of the philanthropists were at. It's where our heads were at. And we weren't paying attention to the other side. I mean, I think this time we're much more paying attention to the other side. And a lot of the philanthropists that are driving the policy changes are also making impact investments and are like a lot more conscious about what they're funding. So, I think that there's no avoiding that you're going to have some, whatever, not the most awesome kind of companies and organizations and entities, but I think hopefully that you're going to see some really big entities that are pretty awesome. And, MAPS is basically a nonprofit pharma company that's going to hopefully get real big and really anchor an ethics in the space. that didn't happen in cannabis. And then there's just some really cool for-profit that have, Dr. Bronner's were technically for-profit, and there's some really cool companies getting off the ground that have a real deep ethic. So yeah, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic the psychedelic space will be better. And then also policy-wise in Oregon, we intentionally made it so that you can't, a license for growing mushrooms is restricted to a single site that's not that big. So you can make a good livelihood, but you can't have a huge corporate takeover. And there's no branding and marketing of the medicine in Oregon. So we're just really kind of taking a different path, at least in these crucial ballot measures. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's going to be exciting the next couple of years for sure.
Yeah, no, it's going to be pretty interesting. Yeah, hopefully by 2030, everyone's pretty much, having experience. That'd be good.
It's late. We can make these jokes. It's dark the whole day, and it's already we can make one joke.
Yeah.
So now we're excited if this really kicks off in Europe, and we're working on it in Germany, of course. And I think we covered a lot of ground. Of course, we want to see the dog again, properly introduced.
Oh yeah. So this is Appa. Appa's now napping.
Okay. Napping?
Yeah.
Really?
There he is. Look over there. Hey, there's a little Appa. Oh my God. There's a little Appa. Yeah.
Where is he? Okay, now you went back to bed in the morning.
Oh,
it's still early, right?
Can you see? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, okay. Oh
my gosh, I got a little shoe.
So cool.
So that little Appa.
Okay, great. Now we have him in the picture and in the podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for doing this. And I know you have a super busy schedule, and it's 8:00 right now. It's probably 9:00, very early.
Yeah. And, I'm so psyched that you're charging and had so much success here, and hopefully paving the way for.
Well, I mean, thanks to you, also to your support in connecting to certain people like Monica or Rick, who have probably 28,000 requests a day for podcasts. Yeah. So thanks to you, they said yes, and we could actually talk to them. So thank you for being on the New Health Club show, as always. I hope it's going to be a regular. You're going to be a regular guest twice a year with every update that's happening in the psychedelic world, and this will be more and more, as we know. So thank you so much for talking to us. It was a pleasure and very interesting again.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for having me, and look forward to sharing ever more good news in the months and years to come.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.